100,000 cold cases in the United States. They won't be solved with CODIS alone.
On June 1st of 1989, at around 6:30 a.m., 14-year-old Stephanie Isaacson had left her house near the intersection of Nellis and Steward, walking towards Eldorado High School. At approximately 8:40 that evening, near the intersection of Steward and Nellis, several of her school books and belongings were found in a desert area. At that point, search parties responded to that area and began searching and located Stephanie's body about 25 yards off of a trail that she normally took while walking to school.
She was a young girl that was sexually assaulted and murdered on her way to school, staying with her dad and just walking to school like she always did every morning. And some guy came along and did this to her, and it went all these years without anyone knowing what had happened.
The Isaacson case remained unsolved for decades, partially because the low amount of DNA that was there, but also because there was no funding. Justin Wu is the philanthropist in the Las Vegas area that is interested in helping Othram solve not just one or two cold cases, but a group of cold cases.
So I think that I had seen them on Othram, what they were doing on Facebook. I mean, they're pretty good about doing social media, and you see the stories, and it's very interesting because, you know, I'm a fan of like the Law and Orders and that type of stuff and those the crime things. It's ridiculous fantasy, but you know, it's nice to see it in real life, that them working and the technology and the advancements that they've done with the DNA.
He was pretty blown away by the capabilities we had, and I think he did his own research into the cases that we were helping move forward that were previously thought to be unsolvable. And he came to us and basically said, I want to help fund a case from my home city, and that's being Las Vegas. My
background comes from marketing and advertising, and I saw what Othram was doing with their like crowdfunding. And I think that it's very interesting. I just thought it would be easier instead of getting such small chunks. I think people do, you know, $10, $20 here and there toward those $5,000 cases, was to try to knock them out a different way with the community leaders, where they're doing a whole case. Or maybe in another city, you would get 5 community leaders to each chip in $1,000 a piece and then knock out a full case. I think it's a little bit of a stronger model for, you know, getting the cases funded faster.
He has spent his life trying to do good by his community, and has taken a special interest in trying to help the community alleviate these cold cases and maybe even work on new cases to prevent people from committing repeat crimes.
This was a case where I actually had a relationship with the Las Vegas Metro Police Department Forensic Unit. Kelly Guthrie is the forensic scientist name there, and she and I had spoken on and off, I would say 6 months leading up to us taking on Stephanie's case.
In November of 2020, Othram DNA Labs reached out to us and indicated they would like to offer their services to process a cold case using this new technology in an effort to solve.
The Stephanie Isaacson case was particularly challenging for us. There was evidence from the sex assault. However, the evidence had been tested over the years. They had performed STR testing, uploaded that profile to CODIS. They performed other kinds of testing. And by the time we found out about the case, there was almost no DNA left. In fact, there was a DNA quantity that was so low, it was 120 picograms, that at that point, it wouldn't have even been eligible for STR testing. And so there was no lab that they could send that evidence to, and the case seemed doomed for just, you know, never being solved, you know, just one of those cases that would never get cracked. And although 120 picograms is a small amount of DNA, it's about the equivalent of, you know, maybe 15 cells worth of DNA. It is very similar to the quantities that we've approached for other cases at Othram. And so we, you know, this was the last shot. There was no other DNA other than this. The DNA amount that they had was not usable or acceptable by any other place that they were able to go to. So we figured it was a little bit risky to take on the project. It was scary for us to agree to work it, but at the end of the day, it was all that was left, and this case was not going to get solved. And the mother of this child, the mother of Stephanie, had been calling the agency, and, you know, she was looking for answers. And I think the agency wanted to make sure that they could exhaust all possibilities and do quite literally anything possible to get an answer. So they sent the DNA to us, and we were able to build a profile from this DNA.
We were able to build a full profile, which led to some potential family members of the person we were looking to that had done this horrific crime to Stephanie. And we returned those leads to Terry Miller with the Las Vegas Metro Police Department, and she went out and did her good investigation. I think it took her to a couple states that she had to look into, and then they were able to basically confirm that the gentleman that we had kind of pinpointed that could be a good candidate for this person was in fact that person. And as it turns out, he had committed a similar crime in 1986, just 3 years before Stephanie's crime.
A break in a 32-year-old cold case. Police saying this afternoon that they have identified a suspect in the death of a 14-year-old girl. Investigators say back in 1989, Stephanie Isaacson was sexually assaulted and strangled near Nellis and Steward. Last year, police say they got a donation to help solve cold cases with limited DNA. DNA was sent to the lab and police got a match. It was a man who had committed suicide back in 1995.
He is, again, Darren Marchand. He was actually arrested prior to Stephanie's murder in 1986 at the age of 20 for the murder of Nanette Vandenberg, who was 24 years of age. Vandenberg had been found strangled in her residence on February 27th of 1986. That case had been dismissed at the preliminary hearing due to lack of evidence. Marchand committed suicide in the Las Vegas area in 1995 prior to his 30th birthday. So unfortunately, there will not be a criminal process in this case.
Because of Justin's philanthropy and because of his ability to fund this case, we were able to answer these questions for the mom, and now she has closure as to who committed these crimes against her daughter.
So it's bittersweet. It feels good to be able to help out and stuff, but then you see the impact on the families and the hurt that they've been going through for, God, what was it, 30 something years. I actually got to meet both of the parents, and it was a really difficult thing, very emotional. But we're glad to bring a little bit of closure to them and to help the city and the community out with that. That's a good feeling that way. But then the family, we sympathize for what they've gone through.
I do have a statement that I would like to read from the mother of Stephanie, and I'm going to quote verbatim. "I'm glad they found who murdered my daughter. I never believed the case would be solved. It's good to have some closure, but there is no justice for Stephanie at all. We will never have complete closure because nothing will ever bring my daughter back to us."
If you want to learn more, come to DNAsolves.com, DNAsolves.com. There's cases that need funding support. You can donate your DNA to help solve the next crime, or you can share some of the stories that we've announced with law enforcement.